How is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Down Podcast, the show where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. Today, we are back with our Week 2 installment of our pregame show. You know what that means. The Bears face off with the Cincinnati Bengals tomorrow, Week 2. The 1-0 Bengals face the 0-1 Bears. It's going to be a very big game, a very influential one in terms of how this Bears season starts off. But before we get into this one, I would like to say you guys have been showing mad support recently on all platforms. We really appreciate it. So we're bringing you guys the most comprehensive Bears coverage on the web. Like, follow, subscribe wherever you are listening. We're going to be posting videos each and every day covering the 2021-2022 Chicago Bears. Your guys' support definitely keeps us going. Welcome back, though. I am your host, Chris Malpe, today to break down this Week 2 matchup. Should be a very good game. I am joined with my co-host, Parth Shaw. Parth, how's it going, man? How have you been?
Doing pretty good. Just tired. The Friday grind is going hard today. Woke up early to get some schoolwork done. It's about to be 3 o'clock, so time to relax for the rest of the day. Tomorrow's gonna be a great day with IU taking on Cincinnati. Can't wait to go to that game. And then Sunday, packed with football action. The Bears obviously going to be playing their first home game of the season against the Bengals. I'm super excited for that one. And yeah.
Fair warning, you do know that these guys are watching this on Saturday, right?
Oh, they are. Oh, yeah.
We're pre-recording. We're pre-recording. We're back on the pre-recording grind. But yeah, a lot to look forward to this weekend in general. I'm sure by the time this is out, the Bearcats will have taken over at Hoosier Stadium.
Top 10.
Go Bearcats, go Hawkeyes, go Bears. There's a lot to look forward to this weekend. But obviously, September 19th, the Bears have their home opener against the 1-0 Cincinnati Bengals. After a solid opener, they're going to look to continue looking good against the Bears and start 2-0. What seems like probably for the Bengals a first time in a long time. ESPN's matchup predictor is giving Chicago a 54.2% chance of winning this one, with the Bengals at 45.4%. Looking at the season leader so far for Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, 20 for 27, 261 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that Week 1 win. Joe Mixon, the best running back in the league so far, 29 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown for him in Week 1. And Jamar Chase had a day against the Bengals, the rookie out of LSU, obviously connecting with his former quarterback in Joe Burrow. 5 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Taking a look at the Bears, Andy Dalton, 206 yards, no touchdowns and interception. David Montgomery with 108 yards and a touchdown. And Marquise Goodwin leads the way for the Bears with 4 receptions for 45 yards. We don't have the injury reports just as of yet, but for the Bengals, Ricardo Allen, Marcus Bailey, Darius Phillips, Jackson Carman, and Trey Waynes are all on the injury report. Trey Waynes being listed as out. They moved Ricardo Allen onto injured reserve this week. And then the 3 in the middle that I mentioned there, all questionable. For the Bears, Marquise Goodwin, Joel Ubuniwe, Darnell Mooney, and Simba Webster are all questionable, and I believe there's actually more on the Bears injury report. But most of those guys that are questionable are going to play. I think they're all going to play, actually. And then Eddie Goldman is listed as doubtful. For this Week 2 matchup, the Bears are 2.5-point favorites with the over-under for the game set at 45 points. The Bengals currently scoring 27 points per game, allowing 24 per game, while the Bears are at 14 and 34. Bengals averaging 410 yards of offense to the Bears 350, and allowing 429 yards per game compared to the Bears 395. So if you guys don't know how these pregame shows work, we basically run down all of our weekly coverage and then make our picks at the end of the game. So let's start where we start during the week. So let's take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals, the opponents. Coming in strong, a sneaky good team led by Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, obviously there at running back. I already mentioned Jamar Chase earlier. They've also got T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Quite the stout wide receiver room coming to Chicago against a secondary that definitely struggles. Taking a look at their tight end position, they've got CJ Uzama. I don't know how to pronounce it. Bengals fans were all up in the mentions on the Meet the Opponents video. And then they've got a young offensive line with some solid pieces, but not much experience due to injuries. They allowed 5 sacks last week. That line is comprised of Jonah Williams, Quentin Spain, Trey Hopkins, Xavier Suafilo, and Iowa's own Riley Reif. Moving on to Cincinnati's base 4-3 defense, they've got some dogs here for sure. Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, a name we all know, Larry Ogunjobi, Trey Hendrickson, someone who had a great year last year with the New Orleans Saints, I believe, had a lot of sacks, 10 plus. I don't remember the exact number. Linebackers, they've got Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, and Akeem Davis Gaither, and then a pretty solid secondary. Trey Wayne's obviously going to probably miss this one. They're going to have Eli Apple stepping in there alongside Chidobe Awuzie, and then two very solid safeties with Von Bell, who has been talking big about coming into Chicago and taking over the city, alongside Jesse Bates. So, Parth, before we go any further, just taking a look at the opponents and what you saw from the Bengals in week 1 in that 24-27 overtime win over the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think about what this unit is going to bring to Soldier Field on Sunday?
They're here to play. These young guys definitely competed hard. Last week you saw that against the Vikings, a very good offense. This defense did not let up that many points. I thought the Vikings offense would have easily scored 30-plus points, and that did not happen. This Bengals defense is definitely underrated. They're young, they're talented, and there's something to watch out for. Andy Dalton's definitely got to be on his toes. He can't, just float the ball in everywhere. The secondary is getting better. I mean, you saw them, limit Justin Jefferson last week. Despite Adam Thielen going off for 2 touchdowns, he didn't have that many yards. Not many long balls were given up. So this defense has definitely played their first game better than I expected them. On the offensive side of the ball, led by Joe Burrow, coming out of college, we all know Joe Burrow was the most NFL-ready quarterback in that draft class, and he's playing really well despite, coming off of an ACL injury or whatever happened to his knee basically last year. He's been playing really well. Last week I thought he managed the game really well. He was able to find the receivers at whatever time he needed to, and he hit the deep ball with Jamar Chase. You got to watch out for those two. They've been playing together since college, so their chemistry is already at a whole nother level. And just coming to the NFL, those two are going to be explosive. You got to watch out for that because this secondary, like Chris said, our Bears secondary isn't as good. It's definitely the weakest link on the defense, and it's tough when you're going up against 3 good wide receivers like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and
Tyler Boyd.
There you go.
Yeah, it might be a tough day for Chicago's secondary, but also looking at the flip side, the Bengals allowed the 3rd most wide receiver yards in week 1. They allowed 22 receptions for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns to Minnesota's wide receivers. Trey Waynes was sidelined for that game. He's probably going to miss this one as well. So Awuzie allowed 6 for 83. Apple allowed 7 for 79 and a touchdown. And then Mike Hilton in the slot allowed 7 for 58 and a touchdown. I expect the Bears to bounce back offensively in this one. I like what Cincinnati did up front. I really like their front seven, some players like DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson. They did a good job at stopping Dalvin Cook. I'm not sure what to expect out of David Montgomery this week. Don't even ask me to predict it because I think it could be completely one way or completely the other, especially depending on how good the Bears offensive line can hold up against a little bit worse of a pass rush, I would say, than we saw last week. But they did hold Dalvin Cook to 20 rushes for 61 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. He still had a touchdown and only a long run of 17, so we'll see if Montgomery can continue with the hot hand. But I like what Cincinnati brings in defensively. Offensively, I think it's going to be a tough day for the Bears. Joe Burrow in their week 1 matchup with the Vikings had 9.7 yards per pass, almost a first down every time he dropped back and threw the ball, assuming that every play was 10 yards. Obviously, that was not the case. It was probably needed multiple different ranges of yards to gain. But still, he was very efficient and did what he needed to in week 1. The Bears are also going to have another good day stopping the run against Joe Mixon. He currently leads the league in rushing yards. He had 29 carries for 127 yards. 4.4 yards per carry and a touchdown. He had a long run of 19 yards. The Bengals put up 149 rushing yards last week. If the Bears are going to want to win this one, they're probably going to have to hold them to sub 150 because if you get that offense going, if you get the play action going with Joe Burrow, you're going to be in trouble. The Bears secondary is also going to have a tough day. The Bengals compiled 261 receiving yards, 101 of those coming from Jamar Chase, another 58 from Higgins, who had a long catch of 28 yards. CJ Uzoma, a catch for 32 yards. He had 35 total. And then a quiet day for Tyler Boyd, who's someone who's definitely is bound to play better against a secondary like the Bears. in the Bengals' defense, or in the Bears' defense, Minnesota's defense did not look that great whatsoever at all. So I think this game's going to be a good game, and it could turn into into a complete shootout with two of the weaker secondaries in the league. But I expect that the Bears hopefully will be able to get some pass rush on Burrow this week. He got sacked 5 times last week. And then offensively, I would expect them to have a better day, at least in terms of the passing game. You have to attack the secondary. We saw Andy Dalton only throw one pass 15 yards or longer in week 1. If you want to have success like Kirk Cousins did in week 1, and he put up pretty good numbers, only didn't complete 13 passes, 36 for 49, 351 yards, and 2 touchdowns. No turnovers in that one for him through the air. You have to attack them vertically. I think the Bears are going to do that. I would expect a pretty big game tomorrow from Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney. I said it in the Fan Mail Friday. I actually would expect 100-plus yards from Robinson. I think it's going to be a very good game for him. Let's move on to our 3 key matchups segment of the pregame show. Parth, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, there's a lot of important matchups in this one. The Bears pass rush, the Bears, once again, if they can get a run game going, they could really help themselves out. Andy Dalton versus the secondary of the Bengals, the Bears secondary versus Joe Burrow. You could go all over the map here, but in your opinion, what do you think is the key to a week 2 victory here?
I think it's getting pressure on Joe Burrow. We saw that last week. We saw the Vikings get 5 sacks. It's not hard to get to Joe Burrow. The Cincinnati Bengals offensive line is one of the worst in the league, and this Bears defensive line especially, has some talented pieces on the line. Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Robert Quinn, Eddie Goldman should be back this week, and as well as some rotational pieces that can come in and get some sacks at times too. Bilal Nichols, just to name someone. But this defensive line has a lot of players that I expect to have a good game this week, especially because last week we saw the D-line not have many pressures against that Rams offensive line. Khalil Mack did not record a single pressure. I think Hicks and Quinn had half a sack each. So I'd like to see them get a couple sacks at least against Joe Burrow and this offensive line. I feel like the more you can do that, you can get him shaky in the pocket. Hopefully he makes a mistake. He's someone to not make many mistakes, but when the pressure is there, a lot of quarterbacks make mistakes. And I think this Bears defensive line can easily get to Joe and hopefully get a couple sacks.
Yeah, we saw the Bengals really get dominated by the Vikings up front last week. Outside of Joe Mixon having a good game, Burrow, wasn't essentially running for his life, but the Vikings were able to record 7 quarterback hits, as well as 7 tackles for a loss and 5 sacks, 2 from Michael Pierce, 1 from Harrison Smith, 1 from Neil Hunter, and then 1 from Nick Vigil. So it's going to be on the Bears linebackers to step up in this one. We saw the Vikings linebackers have success in the blitz game. So I hope Roquan Smith, we're not going to see Danny Trevathan. He's on IR. Alec Ogletree, I hope some of those guys who have been playing well as of recently can step up and obviously get to Burrow, because that's going to be really important in this one. I was going to go with the same thing as you, but I'm going to switch it up and go to the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go with the Bears attacking this Cincinnati secondary. I already mentioned that they struggled last week against Minnesota's offense, and I think you have to attack them vertically. We saw Adam Thielen last week, 9 receptions, 92 yards. He had 10.2 yards per catch, as well as a long target of 24. KJ Osborne, 76 receiving yards, 10.9 yards per catch, a 25-yard catch for him. Justin Jefferson, while he was bottled up a lot of the game, still had a decent stat line, 5 receptions, 71 yards, 14.2 yards per catch, and a long pass of 34. You have to attack this secondary of the Bengals vertically if you want to win this one. They're down their number 1 man in Trey Waynes, and, it's just how it is. Matt Nagy has to open up the playbook this week. You have to trust the speed that you have on this offense if you're Chicago. What was the point of bringing in Damiere Byrd and Marquise Goodwin? I said it right for the second time now. I'm proud of myself. I said Goodwin. But what was the point of bringing them in if you're just going to throw them on jet sweeps and bubble screens? You got to send them deep. You have to take attention to the defense, and maybe that opens up the run game for someone like Montgomery, but you have to send your burners long. And trust me, I believe someone will get open against any defense in the NFL, much less the Bengals. The Bears have so much speed with Mooney, Byrd, Goodwin, and eventually when guys like Tariq Cohen come back. And all reliable Allen Robinson, obviously, will be there too. Hopefully he can eat in this one. He only had, I believe, 3 catches for 36 yards last week. Let me check that. 6 catches for 35 yards. He was not as effective as we wanted him to be, and the passing game overall wasn't. You cannot be scared to throw the ball downfield. If you're the Bears and you want to win this one, you have to put up some points. You cannot play horizontal, and you have to trust Andy Dalton to make these throws. Obviously, I think a lot of us would want to see Justin Fields out there, but I do believe that Andy Dalton can hopefully make the throws and get the ball to his playmakers, who I believe will be open. So let's move into, obviously, the most important part of these pregame shows. Let's make our predictions. Today's prediction is sponsored and presented by our 2021-2022 season partners, MyBookie. So let's get into a message from them before we make our picks. Guys, bet the football season this year with mybookie.ag. You can receive a 100% match on your first deposit up to $1,000. You can support the show by using our promo code BD. And they also have a crypto rewards program designed to celebrate cryptocurrency players. So any way to play, MyBookie's got your back. Make it a winning season at mybookie.ag. The link is at the top of the description. Once again, thank you so much, MyBookie, for sponsoring today's pregame show and everything throughout the season. All right, Parth, here we go. Man, these weeks keep flying, and I can't really even believe what's happening. If I'm being completely honest, it feels like we were still recording training camp videos, and you and I were at training camp. That feels like it was probably about a month ago, and that was about 2.5 months ago now. But we're in week 2 of the NFL season. The 0-1 Bears have a must-win game in this one. Let's hear it, Parth. What's your pick?
I got the Bears to win this one. This is a big game for the Bears. I think they come out firing. Matt Nagy, I don't think has ever started off as, I think every season he started off as the Bears head coach was 3-1.
3-1. Yeah. I don't know if that happens this season, but it'd be nice to
it probably won't happen
1-1.
this year. Yeah, it won't happen this year, but I think the Bears can win this game. I think Andy Dalton, has a good game for finally. I think he's going to show up against his old team. I think he really wants to win this one at least. If he doesn't, it's not looking too good for him because Justin Fields is right there, and I think Bears fans will not be happy if we lose this one because they'll want Fields in for the next week. But I think the Bears pull this one out 24-20. I think it'll be a low-scoring one. I think both offenses struggle to get the ball going, and somehow the Bears pull it out at the end.
I got to be honest, I don't know the logic there with how bad both of these secondaries are.
I just feel like 24. I mean, you 20 points for this Bears defense is still a lot to give up. I mean, I just feel like this Bears defense, despite being not as good and stuff, it doesn't really give up that many points per game. One thing about them is they don't break. They do bend.
Bend don't break, baby. Exactly. That's been the motto since 2018
and,
when we
as long as we can
didn't break and we just bended.
And as long as we can keep the touchdowns away, I think we can against this team because they're very pass heavy. And like I said, if we can get the pressure on Joe Burrow, this game is definitely in our hands.
Yeah, well, you've got the Bears winning nonetheless, and I'm going to have to go ahead and agree with you there. I've got the Bears by a score of 31-24. Look, I said it earlier, I think it's a shootout between two of the weakest secondaries and two solid offenses, at least two solid-looking offenses in this game. And I think it leads to the Bears squeaking one out late and luckily getting to 1-1. Personally, I'm still waiting on Justin Fields. I think we can still root for Justin Fields as Bears fans and not essentially root for the team to lose. I think Andy Dalton can still not play up to par or barely get us out of games with the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're still going to be 1 week closer to Fields. Fox's Jay Glazer reported earlier this week that the Bears are wishing that Fields doesn't have to start until week 4. And regardless of how this game goes, I still hope Fields can get in week 4, 5, 6. But I'm going to pick the Bears to win this one. I think the pressure gets to Burrow. I really don't trust the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. I think they do a good job at bottling up Joe Mixon for the most part. I think the defense stands strong, at least the front seven. I'm worried with how good Joe Burrow looked in week 1 and how decisive he was with the ball and how he did the right things, that he's going to be able to have a solid game. But I don't think it's solid enough to beat the Bears. I think we see the Bears offense clicking in this game, as hard as it is for me to say that. But I think the Bears have a solid offensive performance in this one and pull it out right near the end, maybe a late touchdown or a Cairo Santos kick to win it. But I'm going to go with the Bears 31-24. Should be a really interesting one. Thank you guys so much for tuning into our week 2 pregame show. Before you go, if you haven't already, if you're listening on YouTube, comment down in the comments. Leave a comment. My goodness, I've recorded twice today. I'm a little burnt out. Leave a comment letting us know your prediction for the week 2 matchup. We want to know what you guys think. And also, we're bringing you guys the most comprehensive coverage on the web. So if you haven't already, drop a like, subscribe, follow if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We're going to keep coming back with videos each and every day, including a post-game tomorrow after the Bears face off with the Bengals. Win or lose, we're always coming back to you guys. We love this team so much, and we're going to keep covering them as long as you guys continue to show the constant support that you do. If you'd like more content from us, head to our website. The link is at the top of the description, beardown.com. You can see columns, articles, and blogs getting you guys ready for the Bears' week 2 matchup with the Bengals and all of the games throughout the season. We're doing some hard work on there, and there are some people behind the scenes that don't get the recognition they deserve. So if you have any extra time and want more content from us, head over to our website. If you'd like to enter giveaways that we have, see sneak peeks of guests we're having on the show, and also interact with us and let us know what you want to see here on the podcast, what you want us to talk about, you can follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Bear Down. Just another great way to interact with us. And finally, you can find the links to our social media pages down in the description, myself as well as Parth, our Instagram and Twitter pages. Once again, another great way to interact with us, and you can also see our thoughts on all things Bears, the NFL, and the entirety of Chicago sports. Parsha, week 2 is finally here. The time to talk is over. I'm definitely a little bit nervous heading into this one, but any last words before the whole game is played and they won't hear from us again until the post-game show?
Yeah, we're not recording till Sunday, so it's going to be a day break, which will be nice, to take tomorrow off. Definitely a little bit nervous about this one. The Bengals are no easy task. I thought the Vikings were going to take care of them last week, and the Minnesota Vikings weren't able to. So Cincinnati, definitely a surprising team. The young quarterback coming into town. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, the AFC North is one of the best divisions in football with the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens. And even though the Ravens lost on that Monday night game, they still look solid. So the Bengals are definitely a sneaky good team, regardless of what happens in this game. And if they come out and beat the Bears, I'll believe that even more so, that they're a pretty good team. I think they're a sneaky good team. They could pull off this upset for sure. I'm not sure if this is a trap game for Chicago, but I believe that we'll be able to get the offense kicking in this one enough to win. Should definitely be an interesting one. But guys, it's been a pleasure to be your host. Once again, my name is Chris Malpe. I'm going to say what Al Davis used to say back in the day. I'm going to take one from the Las Vegas Raiders book. Just win, baby. That's all that Chicago has to do on Sunday to bring it back to 1-1 and at least be content with how the season has gone so far. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with our week 2 postgame show following the Bears versus the Bengals. 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, Soldier Field on Sunday. Should be an interesting one. But Bears fans, as always, do us a favor and stay safe and bear down. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.